So you got to assume, you start by assuming that what you say and what you think is not necessarily you. And of course that's just the case, because a lot of what you think, in fact, most of what you think and most of what you say are the opinions of other people. They're things you've read or things people have told you, and you know, that's a benefit in some ways because you get all those thoughts that other people have spent a long time formulating, but it's a disadvantage in that it's not exactly you.
You can't really be yourself. You're sitting at a table or you're having a conversation with friends or with strangers, and they have strong opinions. Are you ready to say your sincere, honest opinion? Even if you may be mocked, or you may be criticized, or you may be dismissed? Not so simple. We are social creatures. I don't want to say social animals. And we want to fit in. And especially when you take into consideration the fears that we have, the insecurities, the inhibitions, and to the equation, growing up in a home where our parents put on a mask. And we saw that happening. We saw how they've changed depending in whose presence they are. The faces, the masks we put on at work, or with different work co-workers or employees or employers. The face we put on at home, at play. When we need to make an impression, you often see people are in their best behavior, and then when you find them in their own element, very different person. How often did you say, I can't believe this about someone I knew? They were under pressure, or they let their guard down, or something challenged them, and suddenly you see a different persona. Now, can we say that we're living in a fake world? In many ways, yes, an artificial world that's so much focused on externals. You look at someone with makeup and all the accoutrements and cosmetics, and you see one thing. When you get to see them without all of that, you say, wow, I can't believe that. Not to say there aren't beautiful people out there, but when you see them often performing, or a photo op in a magazine, they can look extremely glamorous, and you see them without all that, it's a different person. We live in a world of externals. Look how much millions, billions, maybe even trillions of dollars are spent on cosmetics, on surgery, on plastic surgery, on trying to look younger, on Botox, and all the other substances and matters that are trying to change how people appear. What you see is not what you get in most situations. And that's purely external appearances. When you start talking about personality, yes, we live in a world of media, of images, and anything can be photoshopped. So there you have the fake images, dust of that. Take AI, and you literally can create a complete artificial reality. But even without that, take away technology. The fact of the matter is that in order to fit in, many of us fake it. And we really can be honest and natural. And sometimes even in our own homes. That's how sad it is. Now, I know people who said, you know what? I once thought that was a surrender. But you know what? Everybody's fake, so I could also be fake to some extent. Some of us don't accept that. We want to be real. We want to be sincere, genuine, integrity. And that often is dismissed by the cynics. Say, yeah, you'll get over it. Do as everyone does. Fit in. Don't stand out. Don't try to make a statement. Don't try to be an original. Don't try to be an individual. Yes, to some extent, that too is sometimes fashionable, but with limits. So whoever you are listening to this, I'm sure there are people who will say, this doesn't bother me anymore. I have bigger problems. Others will say, no, it bothers me. Obviously, I wouldn't be speaking about this if it wasn't an issue that we can do something about. And that I'm suggesting that we should learn how to be real. Not just for ourselves and our integrity, but also for our loved ones. And just for reality. I mean, everyone made a big fuss, if you remember, when The Matrix, the movie, came out, that all of reality is fake. It was a program of machines to control human beings in order to breathe, for them to breathe, in order to keep a certain amount of heat that the machines need. I mean, it was quite horrendous when you knew what was going on behind the scenes. One big program. But there's a character in the film that chooses to, even though he knows it's not real, he chooses to go back into that fake world. It's more comfortable. Let's not forget, comfort zones matter. So I cannot, and I never have, preached to anyone how to make your choices. All we can talk about is not what to think, but how to think. And how to think, I'd like to believe that many of us would like to be as real as we can really be. Obviously, there are situations, you're sitting as a guest in a home, and the hostess or the hosts offer you food, and it's horrendous food. So you could say being real means telling them how horrible it is. We understand there's etiquette, and there's diplomacy, and there's tact, and knowing what to say and how to say and when to say. But then there are situations where this is life and death. How many of us had to grow up in abusive environments and to be part of the masquerade? How many people have told me, I cannot stand going home for the holidays, where we all fake it and we smile and we take that picture because that's what our father wanted, when behind the scenes there was horrible abuse of all sorts. And in general, I don't think I need to make a case. If I do, I will make a small case. What's wrong with being fake? Because it's not you. You're not really living up to who you are. You could say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, if you're saying that and that's where you are comfortably, I'm not here to argue with that. I'm here to make the case that it's not really where you should be and where you ultimately be happy and fulfilled. I've often told the story, my son, as a little boy, came home from school. He was all excited. I asked him, what are you so excited? And he said to me, I heard today a very nice thing. I said, what? You were born an original, don't become a copy. It stuck with me over all these years. Today he's no longer a child, he's already a 40-year-old, 41-year-old, with his own children. So recently I asked him, I said, do you remember that? He didn't even remember, but I remembered. I said, so what happened with you? Are you a copy or an original? Now, no pun intended, he happens to be a copywriter. He's a creative director, he's excellent at writing, copy, a wordsmith. So he responds, I'm an original copy, whatever that means. But the idea is clear. You're an original. You have something unique about you. Even though there's many commonalities between us, between people in general. But fundamentally, there's something unique about each individual. And that's the real you. It's part of the real you. Obviously, to say we're all alive, that's also a part of reality. But the real you, when we still get to it, comes down to a unique you, with unique goals, with unique skills and unique talents, and with an indispensable element. And I think this lies at the heart of the initial question. Some people say, hey, we're just evolved creatures. We were once apes, and before that amphibians, and before that bacteria, and before that a ball of gas. So what difference does it make whether we're real or fake? However, if you do embrace, as I do, that each of us was created in the divine image, which means you have a unique soul, you have an indispensable role to play. You're not just an arbitrary, another grain of sand, another bacteria happens to be floating around, who really cares one way or the other? But you matter. And your choices matter. And your whole reality, everything about you matters. Then there's a big difference whether you're going to be a real or a fake. But then comes the dilemma, as I said. What do you do in a fake world? Do you play along and then find little secret moments or secret corners where you can be the real you. And this is a big factor because we are affected by the people around us. Firstly, our parents, our siblings, our schools, our educators, and society itself, media. And as much as people like to call themselves individuals, often it's an individual because that's also fashionable, but are you really being yourself? So what do? Do you just give up on not fitting in? Or do you throw in the towel and just surrender? So this is actually a tremendous topic discussed by the mystics. We'll call it the psychological mystics, in understanding the dilemma. Because on one hand, as I said, there's certain etiquette, there's a certain behavior code, where we sometimes do need to go along with something, even if we're not in the mood. To say, I'm going to be myself, my real self. I'm not in the mood of going, my wife or my husband or my children want to go somewhere, or my friends. No. Sometimes you have to bite the bullet, even if you're not in the mood, and you do what you have to do. You say, but I don't want to be a fake. So then you have to be wise, and don't be a fake. Figure out why there's value in that. And even if there isn't, that you can't figure it out, sometimes you do it because you just do it, because that's our obligation. But if it comes to a point where your whole life is just following, conforming, herd mentality, then you have a problem. So how do you deal with this? So we do actually have in the Bible a story where Jacob dresses in the garments of Esau, his brother, to receive the blessings, which is a masquerade. It wasn't him. He dressed in the garments of his brother. So there's a beautiful analogy from the Baal Shem Tov, the great mystic, 18th century mystic, founder of the Hasidic movement, to understand this dissonance, you can say, this tension, and how we deal with it. The analogy goes like this. An aging and ailing king knows his time is coming, and he wants his son to be the heir to the throne. There's a problem. His son grew up in the palace, he always had people taking care of him, basically spoiled, and never had to earn his way. Attendance is the word I was looking for. He had an attendant for anything. And the king wanted him to be a sensitive leader, not just an arrogant, spoiled brat. It's not the words of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm just driving the point home. So he decides, as painful as it is, he's going to send his son away from the palace to live among the people, on the ordinary, among the people. So then he has to earn his way. He'll learn what life is about without anyone knowing who he is, without anyone catering to him. And he'll develop the sensitivity necessary to be a true leader. But the king knew that once he sends him away, in the beginning it will be painful, but slowly his son will ultimately assimilate his ways and may even forget why he was sent there. So the king decides, I'm going to send a letter to my son several times a year to remind him, you're my son, you're being groomed to be king, I sent you away to learn to be sensitive, to understand the ways of the people, live among them, see them from their own perspective, not as a king. And one day you will return and lead them with the right compassion and the empathy necessary for a true leader. Anyway, the day comes, he calls his son in, and with tears in his eyes, he does what he exactly has planned. And that is indeed what happens. In the beginning, it's very painful, but slowly his son adapts his ways and gets used to his new home, his new environment, and begins to live as they do. But then he gets a letter from his father one day, and suddenly reminds him, and he wants to celebrate. Problem is, what's he going to do? Tell the people, all his friends, I'm celebrating? They'll ask him why. Because you're the next king. They'll either think he's crazy, or they'll be offended. So what do? He throws a party. Free cocktails, a free meal, a beautiful party on me. The whole town is celebrating because they get free food, free celebration. No clue why. And he, meanwhile, is celebrating with them because he knows he received this letter from his father. He understands his purpose, his mission of why he's there. And the Baal Shem Tov concludes, the king is, of course, the divine, the cosmic engineer. The child is each one of us, the soul sent away from a spiritual habitat in heaven, in a spiritual environment where it's comfortable, everything is taken care of, sent away to live in this world, in this material world. And it's made to forget. The child forgets. We don't remember that spiritual reality, even though that's our natural habitat. So we're thrust into this world, and in this world, we have to fit in, and we have to dress in the garments of the world and behave as they behave. When in Rome, there's actual expression in the Medrash that says, when you come to a city, follow its customs. And that's what we do, and we forget. But we're reminded several times a year, whether it's a holiday, whether it's a Shabbat, whether it's other special moments, and suddenly remember that, 1 second, this is not our place. But what do? The soul wants to celebrate, but the body is already very accustomed to and very comfortable with its life in this material world. So you throw a party, you feed the body, and say, here is free food, free drinks, pleasant, take vacation, sleep a little longer. So the body is celebrating because it's getting its needs met, and in an abundant way. And the soul, meanwhile, celebrates because it's a moment of connection to its purpose, to its divine source. And that's how he explains why you find in Judaism focus on foods for different holidays and the Sabbath and other times, festive times. Food, what's so spiritual about food? Food is to keep the body comfortable. So are you faking or not faking it? On one hand, yes. Well, it's the same way when you explain to a child an idea and you can't explain the idea itself, you give them an example. Is that a fake? The example, later they'll learn. You say to them, if you study well, you behave well, I'll give you a prize. You give them a candy, an ice cream, or you take them on a trip. Why don't you just say, do it because it's the right thing to do? Because a child on that level, that child does not yet understand what spiritual sweetness is, or the value of that. So you have to give it on those child's terms. The same thing here, you're not faking it. It's actually part of the process that you're taking a spiritual concept, which the soul fully appreciates, and you're translating in terms that even the body can also appreciate. There's something special happening. So in other words, the way we deal with it is not we ignore the world around us, and we just become ascetics and we separate ourselves. And on the other hand, we don't surrender and we don't give in. We remain apart, but we do what's necessary to engage with the world around us, and at times to even placate it. Because the goal is to transform the material world, not to ignore it. So this is the fascinating thing. It's not either two options. Either you give in and become fake, or you separate yourself and avoid the whole situation, which means you can't really work and integrate with the world around you. You understand that the world was here, even the fake part of the world, for a reason, for you to bring truth and reality into a situation that's artificial or superficial, and that is at times fake. Because everywhere you can find a redeeming factor. Even those that live with the masks and put on a show, and you could see through it, they also have a soul. They also have a beautiful part to them. Why they have to put on a mask? They're all the reasons I mentioned before, and probably others as well. It's the only way for them to survive, the only way to protect themselves, the only way to fit in. How many people have told me, I put on these masks because that's the only way that everyone will be happy. Because when I didn't, and my father saw me crying after I was hurt, he punished me. So I learned to put on a mask for him. And the mask doesn't always mean a physical mask. To behave a certain way, to smile even when I'm in pain. So you come to realize, fine, okay, there's certain situations, but you don't have to become your mask. You don't have to become your armor. And even when there is a situation that requires a certain amount of accommodation, you know the difference. And it's interesting, children actually are the most real entity there is. Because children have not yet developed mechanisms and sophisticated tools to hide, to lie, to be deceptive, to be duplicitous. Children learn that from adults. So the child is the most pure form of reality. A child is what you see is what you get, especially the younger they are. Then they slowly develop. Now again, we're not talking about developing the diplomacy and the etiquette necessary to live in a world and be pleasant. And you say thank you and you say please, even when you're not in the mood, and even when something is disturbing you. At times you have to sometimes just not express yourself. But you have to also know at times you should express yourself. Look what has happened. Look at the crimes. Look what silence is complicity. And we see that in horrible ways, whether it was in the Nazi Europe or other places in the world at different times, where people just fit in. It was uncomfortable to challenge the status quo. So we're not there. Obviously, you have to follow your conscience. But the most important thing of all here, and this goes back to what I said earlier, even when you have to put on a certain face, that should not become you. Know the difference. For that, we need to discover who the real you is. For that, we need to discover your soul. And unfortunately, many of us don't even recognize that. It's one thing I recognize who I really am, but I have to fake it right now, for whatever reason. But what happens when you fake it long enough and you're fake, your mask becomes you. As I always point out, you ask someone, who are you? Who's the real you? And they give you their business card. And when you say to them, that's what you do, that's not who you are. Some people are confused and some people sigh and say, well, I've been doing it so long. What I do has become who I am. Your mask has become your reality. When it should be the other way around. The real you should dictate what you do. And if you do need to put on a mask, the real you should say that, because the soul understands that in certain situations you need to package it a certain way. You need to present it. As a communicator, I can say communication is not just what you say, it's how you say it. So you do need to package. I don't mean package in a way of manipulation or anything that is not healthy. But package means you know how to present it. You don't speak to a 5-year-old the way you speak to a 50-year-old. And different audiences, need different ways of communicating. The garments we spoke about. You need to dress it up in different garments. That's what good communication, that's what relationships are about. But you never forget what is the primary and what is the secondary. What is the means and what is the end. And the end is we're looking for truth. We're looking for reality, yes, even in a fake world. Because the goal is to bring that light of truth, that clarity, into a world of confusion. And today, this message could not be more timely. Because you see, in the media, and in so many other places we get our information, distortions, intentional, not intentional, however you want to understand it, partisan politics, people's agendas, and you can't even know, are you coming from an honest place? Yes, it's easy for media to say, finally, the truth. Pravda in Russian, which is the main newspaper in the Soviet Union, Pravda means truth. Would you trust a newspaper that calls itself Truth? And in the olden days, there used to be a Yiddish version, a Yiddish communist newspaper called Emes, Truth. You know how Emes was spelled? In Hebrew, you spell it Aleph Mem Saf. They spell it Ayin Mem Ayin Samach, which is a complete false way of spelling it. I always had the theory that the editor-in-chief, who was forced to publish the paper, that was a secret way of him conveying, don't even trust the title. Don't trust anything you see here, because even the name is misspelled. But regardless, at least there's an awareness that it's fake. The worst is, as the Baal Shem Tov says, a concealment that hides a concealment, a double concealment. That you don't even know that it's concealed. You don't even know it's fake. You think the fake is real. And the real is fake. So it's time to reclaim ourselves. It's time to reclaim and regain an awareness of the real you. What does God say to Adam after he sins, after he experiences the first dissonance, where he separates his consciousness from his true divine consciousness? Ayeka, where are you? I don't recognize you. Of course he knew where he was physically. You're not present. You're not there. You're there, but you're not there. It's time to ask ourselves, where are you? Where is the real you? Where is it hiding? In psychology, they have the concept of the inner child, very often hiding because it was hurt, so it goes undercover and replaced by a personality, a persona that's not really you. To some extent it is, because it's your creative way of hiding. But it's time to come out from under, from the incognito state, not to hide. I remember the beginning days of the internet, there was a paid service online called Second Life. You paid thousands of dollars to develop a second life, a persona that was not you, a persona that you wanted to be. And you could walk the walk and do everything that you dream of, and it's not you. And people embraced it. I don't know if it still exists or variations of it, because sometimes people are not comfortable who they really are, so they create a fake personality, fake ID. My friends, it's time to discover your true self and not be afraid, because it's beautiful. And then let your true self determine when you need the garments and when you don't need garments. How to be real in a fake world. And ultimately redeem and free and ultimately transform the fakeness into reality. And that's what we call the utopian state of a seamlessness without the duplicity, an integration of all parts of yourself with no need to hide, to fake. Yes, a need to package and present, just like you present anything in a pleasant way. But for this we need courage, and we need study and emotional intelligence to discover the real you. And where do you begin? A good place, try out my book, Toward a Meaningful Life. It's a book that talks about that, who the real you is. There are, I'm sure, other books as well. Let's get to know your soul, not just your body, not just your masks, but what's behind the mask. Ask yourself the question, what would I be like if I were not under the influence of others, and I did not have to serve or satisfy other people's expectations? This doesn't mean we should not be responsible, obviously, but it's an exercise of freeing yourself and discovering the true you. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel. Love to hear your feedback and thoughts, and please share. Be well and be blessed.